It's Valentine's Day, or at least it will be when I upload this video, so I figured I'd touch on the subject of PUAs, Mgtow, and Incels. So follow me on a journey through various degrees of misogyny. Pickup artists, or PUAs as they call themselves, are a subculture that's developed online, though it's been around longer than that, often credited to Eric Weber's book, How to Pick Up Girls, released in the 1970s, though it's been around a lot longer than that also. Not to come off as a moral Puritan or anything, but everything about this has a certain air of scumminess to it, though it's hard to put your finger on at first, because they often try and pass it off as advice for shy men on how to approach women. And if that was an accurate representation, it'd be perfectly innocuous. But in reality, pickup artistry is a Machiavellian methodology of deception and exploitation that encourages sociopathic behaviors in pursuit of emotionally detached one-night stands. And don't get me wrong, there are women out there that are also looking for one-night stands, and that's fine. But these PUAs don't make any distinction. If anything, they seem to target women who are trying to mind their own business instead of just using Tinder or Craigslist to find overtly consenting partners. Pickup artistry utilizes legitimate psychological exploits, which do actually work sometimes, but are rather unethical if you ask me. And by their own admission, this shit fails more often than it works, which makes me question if these exploits are really any better than random chance. It reminds me of Boomhauer playing The Averages.
So this is your big secret? You just ask every woman you see until one of them finally says yes?
Man, you gonna tell my secret, man?
PUAs have a technique called stop and shock, in which they basically find a woman walking or jogging by herself and saddle up next to her, then obtrude in front, causing her to stop, and forcing an awkward conversation with an opener like, "I have something to tell you," followed by a cheesy one-liner. Not only is it bothersome for most people to be approached randomly like that, women will often comply simply because the situation is super fucking awkward. Some men get angry when they're rebuked or ignored, so there's an air of danger to it as well. So basically you're using your ability to intimidate or annoy in order to force a conversation with a potentially non-compliant coerced participant. There's also kino escalation and sexual dialing, which involves touching a woman in increasingly provocative ways. Again, most people don't want to be touched by a complete stranger, and will probably put up with it begrudgingly simply to avoid a conflict. But if you happen to put your hand on a woman's shoulder or knee organically, that's fine. I don't think most women have a problem with that if they've given some kind of signals. But the fact that you have to stage it as part of a contrived event with a manipulative interest is creepy and predatory. Then there's the infamous negging, where a PUA throws in random insults or subtle digs in order to covertly erode a woman's self-esteem low enough that she actually considers the douchebag. It's another underhanded psychological exploit that takes advantage of a decent human being's desire to fit in and be liked. Not to be confused with avoiding agreeability. Nobody is turned on by agreeability. I'm not saying that you can't disagree with or criticize a woman like you would do with anyone else, but this is a purposeful effort to take advantage of a person's insecurities and neuroses through mild bullying. And that's really what gets me about people like Roosh V and his ilk. Why can't you all just treat women like people? Be honest about yourself and let the sexual marketplace decide how much sex you get. You gotta trick women into it? Like Rumpelstiltskin? Maybe if you put in as much work into being a better person as you did into tactics of deception, you'd be able to pick up women honestly. Not only is it deceptive, but it treats women like a resource to be used up and discarded. You have to pretend to be someone you're not, cultivate an image and stage events, and all that effort reeks of desperation. Your ego doesn't need to be fed at another person's expense. And yet I hear PUAs self-aggrandizing by claiming they are the alpha males, and that they're engaging in alpha male behavior, despite the fact that the idea of alpha males has been pretty much debunked. Even the guy who came up with the idea in wolf packs admits it wasn't correct.
The term alpha isn't really accurate when describing most of the leaders of wolf packs.
It's just an excuse for selfish behavior now. And they'll also claim that evolutionary biology says that reproduction is a living being's ultimate purpose. However, there's several things wrong with that. First of all, it's a naturalistic fallacy. Just because something's natural doesn't mean it's good or preferable. Taking a shit is natural. Is shitting the ultimate purpose of life? Secondly, the assumption that there's even such a thing as purpose or that evolutionary biology has any bearing on it rustles my jimmies. Evolutionary biology only explains why we have certain proclivities. It has nothing to say about how a rational person should behave. And reproduction is just something you can do if you choose. It's no more meaningful than anything else a person can do with their life. Lastly, The PUA's goal isn't reproduction, it's sex. So you can't say that you're actually doing anything meaningful from an evolutionary perspective. You're just trying to get your dick wet, bud. It's not that noble. As I pointed out before, the internet has made this shit super fucking easy now. So there's no reason why you need to be trying to pick up unsuspecting women under the premise you're legitimately interested when you're not. Plenty of women who are DTF and you don't need to lie to them. No problem with two consenting partners who both know that they're not in it for a lasting relationship. But manipulating people isn't fucking cool. It's not like a game of chess that you're winning. The opponent doesn't even know you're fucking playing. But people who are part of the game lack the empathy to see women as people whose experience is just as important as theirs. And they'll flat out lie about their long-term intentions. Most of these dudes have either gotten their hearts broken or lived unsatisfying sex lives and developed a deep-seated chauvinistic misogyny. They seek to fill the unfillable void with sex in an attempt to boost their ego, when a genuine loving human connection is the thing that mentally healthy human beings really want. Men's rights activists, or MRAs for short, are a somewhat convoluted group with a mixed membership. Most of the MRA agenda seems legit. There are those in the movement fighting against circumcision, the draft, and for better treatment of men in the family court system. They also point out some of the ways men are taken for granted as providers. Expectations to pay for dinner and things like that, which also treats women like they have no agency, which makes aspects of it pro-feminist as well. But with any group there are some bad apples. The movement overlaps with Mgtow, which means men going their own way. Most of these guys are very anti-feminist and heavily chauvinistic. Some, I'm sure, are good people, and they just feel they don't need a girlfriend. Like Bill Murray, for example. But many have espoused a bitter resentment towards women and blame them for their problems, to the point where they have decided that a life without any significant other is preferable to interacting with women above any superficial level. It's a form of bigoted derangement in which an entire demographic is held responsible for the transgressions of individuals within it. It's sad, really, because the ones doing this out of spite have decided to build themselves a shell that, in the end, will isolate them from a genuine loving connection that humans innately crave. This might work for the odd misanthrope, but for most dudes, Mgtow is just a phase. Incels, short for involuntary celibate, is another group that gets a bad rap due to a large amount of its membership being angry men who can't get laid and want to spread the misery. Despite being associated with angry young men, the term incel was coined by a young woman at a Canadian college named Alana, who made a website documenting her involuntary celibacy back in 1993. The term, in its original context, simply describes those who are perpetually lonely. There are many completely innocent reasons why a person could be an incel. Some have medical or psychological issues that make it impossible. But sadly, the term is now associated with an online community known for hating women because they feel they are entitled to sex and aren't getting it. Incel message boards online are rife with discussions involving hateful misogyny and glorification of people who harm women, and pessimistic self-destruction attitudes in general. Elliot Rodger is a hero to them. He's now known as the Supreme Gentleman after his killing spree in 2014, citing his inceldom as a motive. He had no real reason to be an incel, he was just an insufferable person and unwilling to fix anything about himself. That was the first time the term incel came to the attention of the mainstream media, but it wouldn't be the last. In April of 2018, Alec Minisian drove a van through the streets of Toronto, killing 10 and injuring 16 others. His motive was his incel status and hatred of women. Shortly before the killings, he sent out a Facebook post that read, "The incel rebellion has already begun. We will overthrow all the Chads and Stacys." Not only does that sound like the post of a mentally deficient, belligerent child, but he uses terms that most normies wouldn't catch, like Chads. Chads being the men that they're jealous of, and the Stacys are the women that don't sleep with incels, which I guess is all of them. This group is probably the most concerning of those mentioned, because they don't just treat women rudely, they harbor an overt animosity towards them and a celebration of violent extremism. I wonder if prostitution was legal, if these people could just release their sexual frustration and become well-adjusted members of society, or if they'd just strangle all the hookers. Again, I feel bad for the incels because they're not all deranged lunatics. Some are just terminally alone through circumstances outside their control. But that's how they have been portrayed in the media, and now the term is ostensibly synonymous with mass-murdering angry losers.